Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Ron Harrington, back to with another video, and today we are here to continue Konosuba, the Mystic Rangers of Misfortune, based on the Heroes of the Morphing Grid series, Part 4. But as always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't, please check out parts 1, 2, and 3 as they cover Season 1 of Konosuba. As we now enter into Part 4, we will be entering into Season 2 of Konosuba as well. As we journey into this story, we find our heroes gaining new allies, but also new problems along the way. For our merry band of Mystic Rangers, what will their ultimate fate be? Will they be able to overcome the obstacles set before them to become the true heroes of this new and unexplored world? Or will they fall into despair in various forms or fashions, whether it's fighting Hideax, other monsters, or the true monster of all, an endless supply of debt? For all this and more, stay tuned as we now continue Konosuba, Mystic Rangers of Misfortune, based on the Heroes of the Morphing Grid series, Part 4. But as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Where we last left our tale, Kazuma Sato, the Green Mystic Ranger, having seemingly saved the town from the mobile fortress destroyer, thinking that he was going to receive praise and fortune beyond his wildest dream, was met with the cold dose of reality, his life being in perfect balance with that of the law created by Murphy himself. What can go wrong will go wrong. As the representative, Senna, had made her way to the guild, it was revealed that Kazuma was not going to receive rewards and riches, but rather, he was placed under arrest. You see, when the Rangers defeated the mobile fortress, there was an explosive that had to be sent away. Of course, if they hadn't wasted all of their magic beforehand, then maybe they could have dealt with the situation. But unfortunately, the best thing that they could do was teleport somewhere far away. Kazuma giving the order to do so, it resulted in a noble's home being destroyed. As a result, Kazuma was now suspected of high treason, and he found himself being interrogated. To say that Kazuma was in a bit of a slump would be an understatement. To make matters worse, he didn't have his wand to morph and get out of the situation because he had dropped it from his pants when he tried to run away from the authorities. Aqua and the others tried to visit him, help and get him out of prison somehow, way, shape, or form, but due to a barrier that was placed around, not allowing for their powers to work, there was only but so much that they could do. Before long, Kazuma found himself standing before a court-martial, where his crimes of treason were not the only ones that he would have to deal with. You see, Kazuma liked to play a little trick on the women of the town. Using his technique known as steal, it would give him a random item off of a person, but when it came to women, if there was one thing that he was good at stealing, it was their panties. As a result, not only was he branded as a terrorist, but he was also branded a perv. Even for the people who did believe in his innocence, the good women of the town could not help but call him Scumzuma or Kazu Trash. And honestly, Kazuma, he had it coming. Of course, there was enough evidence to prove otherwise. However, Aldart the Noble still had his sights set on getting a guilty verdict. As a result, he swayed the judge's verdict in his favor. However, before Kazuma could be sentenced to execution, surprisingly enough, darkness would come to his defense, revealing herself to be Lalatina Dustinus of the Dustinus family. In doing so, she was able to convince the judge to give Kazuma a stay of trial. Now we find our hero tasked, having to try to prove his innocence, while also repaying for the damages done to Aldar's mansion. Kazuma now found himself more in debt, and now his true journey of suffering only had begun. It was the winter season. As a result, their powers often tended to fluctuate depending on the time of year. For Kazuma, even with the powers of the Green Ranger at his disposal, the power over vegetation, over forestry, winter was kind of seen as the death of that element. While he could use it, it wouldn't be to its fullest effects. And then, to make matters worse, when Megumin and Darkness were trying to get Kazuma out of prison, they set off a lot of explosions that ended up waking up the massive man-eating toads that were normally hibernating during the winter. Now attempting to clean up a mess that they had made, the team of Kazuma, Aqua, and Megumin tried their best to deal with the ever-growing horde of toads. And at first, everything seemed to be going well. The enhanced ranger strength was more than enough for them to hold their own to a certain extent. Of course, Aqua, not realizing that using her abilities with aquatic nature against animals that were also aquatic tended to cancel each other out. It was the primary reason why her Requiem did not work on the toads. But sadly, despite her leveling up in many areas, intelligence was not one of them. She believed she had gotten a good hit on the toad, only for her to find herself being swallowed once again. In a panic, she forgot that she had the strength to rip the toad from the inside out and completely destroy it. Thus, Kazuma had to promptly run in and save her. Thankfully, he was able to level up in some regards when it came to his weapons. He was able to use the ability to transform a piece of wood into any sort of weapon that he needed, one that could be durable as steel for the most part. He could turn a twig into a sword, into a bow and arrow, into a spear, a shield, or anything of the like. Just one of the many perks of the Green Ranger's ability over that of nature. As a result, he freed Aqua from the belly of the toad, and Senna couldn't help but wonder if these were really the heroes that had fought in the Devil King's general. Because, from her point of view, they really didn't look like it right now. Megumin was a double-edged sword. On the bright side, when she was morphed in her ranger form, she could produce 3 explosions a day instead of 1. And they were actually pretty destructive. So much so that she had managed to take out about 30 of the toads. The only downside was that once she used those 3 explosions, she was pretty much useless, and now she too found herself in the belly of a toad. As Kazuma, Senna, and Aqua attempted to run for their lives, hoping to find some sort of strategy to take out the ever-increasing number of the remaining toads that they had to fight, Senna would find herself being captured by one toad, Aqua being captured by another, and Kazuma having to deal with the one. Of course, they were still ever coming, and he wasn't sure of what his next move was going to be. Although thankfully, from out of nowhere, a light of saber would appear, destroying the remaining toads and saving the group, as there were no more left to fight. Aqua, along with Senna, would make their way back to the guild, to bring over a few carts to carry away all the toads they had collected. Altogether, they had slayed about 50, which was quite a milestone to say the least, as being able to kill that many man-eating toads was a big accomplishment, and getting 1,000 heirs per toad, they had actually managed to put a dent in some of the debt they had incurred. But still, it was more than enough. When the others had gone to look and see who had saved them, they had saw a young girl, about the same size as Megumin. In fact, she kind of looked like her, with the hair and the eyes, although she was different as her body was more well endowed in other areas. The girl revealed herself to be Yunyun of the Crimson Demons, proclaiming herself to be Megumin's arch-rival. Kazuma introducing himself, Yunyun was shocked by the new power-ups that Megumin had required, learning that Megumin had become a Mystic Ranger or something along those lines. Although due to her power being drained, she wasn't able to morph, so instead they would have to settle their duel in another way, deciding to go with basic hand-to-hand martial arts. Although this went about as eventful as you'd think of it, as Megumin, while she lacked in physical size, was always one to have a crafty mind. As a result, she used the fact that she was covered in toad slime to gross out Yunyun before scaring her off once again. Before long, Kazuma and the others would find themselves going to Wiz's shop to try to see if they could pawn off a crystal they had found, thinking they could get a decent haul from it. As a result of going to Wiz's shop, they would meet with Yunyun once again, who was waiting for them. Her and Megumin continuing on in their rivalry once more, Wiz thought that she could help with the duel somehow, thinking that in a way of settling their competition, they could use a magical crystal of friendship. Seeing who had the most friends would show them who would be the winner. Instead, the only thing the crystal managed to do was show a lot of embarrassing moments from their past, causing Megumi to break out into a spiral and destroy the crystal, only for that to be added more to Kazuma's debt. But Wiz did see one thing that was of note. She was able to sense out magical potential, and the potential that she was able to see from Yunyun was incredible to say the least. As a result, she would offer Yunyun an opportunity. Of course, Kazuma wondered what she meant by this, but then Wiz would explain that there was still one more slot open, the Pink Mystic Ranger. Kazuma thought this over for a second. Adding someone who was actually capable, someone who could fight, use magic, and when all in all had her head on her shoulders, well, why wouldn't he take that opportunity? As a result, they agreed. Of course, Yunyun was a bit taken aback by it all. The idea of becoming one of these Mystic Rangers and actually being able to join a party along with her rival, someone who she could battle with and improve, she looked forward to the opportunity. Of course, Megumin thought of it in another way. While she wouldn't say it aloud, she was actually pretty happy that Yunyun was going to be joining. As such, Wiz would offer the pink wand to Yunyun, and Yunyun would accept, being able to now become the Pink Mystic Ranger. They would practice using their abilities on the outskirts of town. Hopefully they wouldn't damage anything else or incur any more debt, as Kazuma feared. But at the same time, Kazuma was able to see that Yunyun could hold her own, a lot more than the others to say the least. Yunyun was balanced in her magic and in her fighting capabilities, and her stats were off the charts. Wiz even had to admit, of the 5 rangers, she definitely had the most potential to say the least. Although that didn't mean that the others weren't good in their own ways, it was just that they had a tendency to hinder themselves. But for Kazuma, he knew what that meant. Wiz didn't have to say it, but he knew what he was dealing with. When it came to darkness, Megumi and Aqua, sure, they were skilled. They had their moments, but that was all they were. Simple moments. They weren't like the real deal, when it's so to speak. But for now, Kazuma had his team. The 5 Mystic Rangers all together. Well, not all together, as Darkness had to return back home and deal with some type of arrangement between her, her father, and that creepy All-Dark Lord. One can only imagine what he could have been doing to poor Darkness. Kazuma didn't even want to think about it. In the meantime, they had to figure out a way to earn some real money. Thankfully, Luna of the guild had offered them a chance to go into Keel's dungeon, a place that hadn't been explored yet. Of course, they may have to deal with some monsters, but for the most part, they could have any treasure or anything else that they found in there. Kazuma jumped at the opportunity. They needed all the help and all the treasure that they could get. Kazuma, Megumin, Aqua, and Union would all make their way to Keel's dungeon. Megumi, of course, would sit on the outside, mainly because her explosion magic really wouldn't be good inside of a dungeon where they could all be trapped and slowly die. So, Kazuma would lead a team of himself, Union, and Aqua within the dungeon. The 3 deciding to morph beforehand, they were able to make their way through the dungeon with relative ease. For Kazuma, he had gained the skill Foresight. It allowed him to see in the dark relatively well. As for Union, Crimson Demons had the eyes of Crimson. As a result, they could find their way through the dark also. But of course, Aqua had to be the most annoying about it, mainly because all she would do was brag about her being a goddess and giving her the ability to see through the dark as well, just as easily as she could in the day. Before long, as they had managed to find their way to the end of the dungeon, they met with an arch-wizard named Keel. Of course, Aqua wasn't too fond of him, mainly because he was the undead, and they didn't appreciate the fact that there were Hideacs roaming around. Although Keel would explain that he actually didn't work with those things, they just started crawling around the dungeon like roaches after he took over after a while. Normally, he'd just destroy any of them that came across, but since Aqua was really in a foul mood, she had taken it upon herself to destroy many of the zombie-like warriors that had come their way. For all of her faults, when it came to fighting the undead, that was something she was good at. As the 3 rangers talked with the rather undead arch-wizard, they learned of his life as a priest and how he had ran away with his true love, and how in order to gain the power to protect them both, he actually sold his soul and became an arch-wizard. Of course, in the end, his wife died before him, and he had tried multiple times to kill himself so that he could be with her again in the next world, although unfortunately he was unable to do so, never being able to find his true rest. Although thankfully, that was where Aqua came in. Aqua could be dense. She could be unsympathetic at times. But if there was one thing she did know was at least some form of compassion. Using her abilities, she would be able to put Keel to rest, allowing him to be forgiven and to be reborn once again in the same world as his wife. This was all that he could ask for, as he thanked the Rangers for their assistance. He gave them all the treasure that he had, and for Kazuma and the others, that was a relief. Of course, the Union wished that they could have had an opportunity to fight, to use her powers and really go all out and see what she was capable of, but she could always have a battle with Union or Megumin, and they could always have a duel, so that was fine for the most part. They would prepare to make their way out of the dungeon, and as they were doing so, Kazuma came to a weird realization that all of the gremlins, all of the mimics, and all the other monsters in the dungeon, they were all attracted to holy auras since they were undead, which meant that a lot of the problems and issues that they had had before now was actually because of Aqua. Aqua tried to hide her transgressions, however, before she could do so, Kazuma would grab Union by the arm and use Lurk to escape, leaving the poor Blue Ranger all there to her lonesome. Before long, the three Rangers would eventually make their way out of the dungeon, with Aqua yelling at Kazuma for leaving her there once again, although he would shut her up by offering to buy her a drink. As they made their way back to the guild for dinner, for drinks, and for a good time and merriment, it seemed as though they might be on the right track. However, Aqua would once again take things a bit too far. It started with her offering to buy everyone a drink. Of course, Kazuma didn't really think about it at the time, but he should have realized that this was a terrible mistake. Everyone was drinking and enjoying their merriment, Union and Megumin having a drinking contest unopposed, and for the most part everything seemed to be going well. It was all going well until the end of the day, as everyone left and went home. The three girls were all standing side by side in a back alleyway, throwing up profusely. As Kazuma stood there amongst the three girls, amongst the vomit, realizing that they had blown through almost all of their money, this wasn't how life was supposed to be. Here they were, the Rangers, the defenders of this world, the ones who would defeat the Devil King, and yet they were getting their ass kicked by endless debt. But this would not be the end of our heroes. No, no, no. Their journey is far from over. Although in the end, what would be the bane of their existence? Would it be some horrible monster? Would it be some unseen tragic fate? Or will it be their crippling debt that just seemed to grow more and more by the day? More Rangers, more problems, I suppose. But for this team, their journey in this unexplored land, they were indeed far from over. This concludes Konosuba, Mystic Rangers of Misfortune, Part 4, based on the Heroes of the Morphing Grid series. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue the series, What If Captain America Was in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, Part 3. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.